distinguished speaker today, which is Dr. Daman DE. Dr. Daman DE is Director of Project Development from COP Power Hong Kong Limited. And Daman joined COP in early 2019 and is responsible for the development of the Hong Kong's offshore LNG terminal. And Daman started his career as a geotechnical engineer and later transited into managing infrastructure-related projects. He worked for a number of major infrastructure projects, and before taking up the current role, Daman worked for the Airport Authority on the project of the third runway. So, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Dr. Daman DE.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Secretary of the Environment, distinguished guests, Professor Pang, and ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for having me this morning on this very important conference. And I'm very much looking forward to learning from many of you today. But in the meantime, I have an opportunity to share with you a project that we have recently been working on. And I'm going to divide my time in looking at three aspects. First of all is on our power company's decarbonization journey, briefly. Mr. Wong had actually mentioned some of that. And then I'm going to discuss more on the development of the offshore LNG terminal and latch on this particular experience. We've learned quite a lot on developing offshore projects, and I would like to share with you some of the experience, some of the findings, and what we've learned, and tally with the theme of the conference is how ready are we if we were to do more infrastructure offshore projects in Hong Kong. So I'll keep to these three titles. And first of all, on the journey that we take on decarbonization for the power company. And although I'm from CLP, the target is, with my understanding, is very largely and very closely matched between the two companies. So this literally speaks pretty much for Hong Kong as a whole in power generation. We have been all along providing our support to the government on the decarbonization. And right from, as Mr. Wong mentioned, the initiative back in 2015, the initiative to reduce the amount of coal burning in power generation and replaced by natural gas, which we see very much as a bridging fuel for getting to net carbon zero. It's not the complete leap, but it is a big step, as we all know that natural gas would have approximately 50% only of the carbon dioxide generation from as compared to coal-fired power station. So with the newly launched 2050 plan, we are no different. We are completely supporting the initiative and at the same time maintaining the high efficiency, high reliability of the power generation. If we take a look at how we have started with the natural gas being used in Hong Kong, this all started back in probably around 1996 or thereabout, where we first introduced the really long offshore pipeline from Hainan, from the gas field in Hainan, which is about 800 kilometers away. So that was the first ever long-distance pipeline that directly supply natural gas to Hong Kong's CLP power station. 10 years or so later on, there is the introduction of the natural gas from Daipang, Shenzhen, to the Hong Kong electric facilities. And then the last to add to the portfolio was the big initiative from mainland, which is the west to east pipeline gas. And we from Hong Kong, probably not a lot of people know about this. We actually benefited from that with a branch coming from this big initiative. And the branch that we've taken gas from by building a pipeline from Daichan Island to the CLP power plant. So there are currently 3 sources of supply of natural gas to Hong Kong. But we do need to broaden the portfolio if we were to completely replace the use of coal, and this is where our project comes in. So not to pursue the similar line of long-distance pipeline, we turn to another form to add to the portfolio, and this has come from what we call liquefied natural gas. This basically is turning the natural gas into a liquid form by cooling. And the benefit of cooling is that it reduces greatly the volume and making it much more economic to transport for long distances. The gas is, the liquid itself is colorless, odorless, and non-toxic. This form of transporting in a liquid state has been started back in the late 50s, I think. And ever since, there's been a gradual increase in this form of transportation of the natural gas. In terms of the supply chain, this is quite simple. From the gas field, it gets liquefied and becomes more much smaller in volume to transport. And these are transported in the courier, LNG courier, to a destination where the liquid form can be transferred into storage locally where the facility is. And in our case, this facility is an offshore terminal using a special form of vessel to store the liquefied natural gas before using a local pipeline transported to the power station. So it's quite a simple supply chain. And this is the facility that we are currently building in Hong Kong. It is a jetty that allows the courier, the LNG courier, to berth on one side, and the storage vessels that we're going to bring in will berth on the other side to store the LNG and let the LNG cargo leave after it is stored. So there are many long-term benefits from a facility like that. We will be able to access more competitive supply from globally, particularly in times when there is a volatile in the supply and the prices, and to be able to have more flexibility is very important. And this is going to be a key part in the overall decarbonization plan. And at the same time, we will be keeping abreast of the technology development and looking to enhance future greener form, like Mr. Wong has alluded to, on hydrogen and etc. So all this development is part of the journey of where we're trying to get to. This is the picture of what it's going to be like when the LNG carrier arrives at the jetty, transferring the LNG across to the storage unit. And this is a particular form of storage unit. Unlike many land terminal where you're using purpose-built tanks, this is a vessel with a large storage capacity, storing the LNG and uses it as it is needed. So this is what you will see shortly in the offshore environment. This is the vessel that I talked about for storing locally the LNG. It is the exact vessel that we're going to have on a charter arrangement. It's called, at the moment it's called the Challenger, but I suspect that the name might be named something else to tally more with a local kind of initiative. The vessel is big. I mean, we're talking about the overall length is close to 350 meters. And that means it's more than the length of 3 full-size football pitch, if you can imagine the kind of size that we're talking about. And this is important because then we would be able to not needing very frequent visit of the LNG cargo to Hong Kong, and hence making it more manageable. Now, this is the form that has been used in other parts of the world, and in particular, I've chosen 2 examples to illustrate. One is closer to us in Malaysia, in Malacca by Petronas. It's been used since 2012. The other one is Guanabara Bay in Brazil, in Rio. This is quite a famous one, I would say, because if some of you recognize this 2014, especially the football fans, this is where the World Cup took place in Brazil. And this facility actually was tried to get ready to provide sufficient energy security to the various cities, such that the World Cup can be held in a satisfactory manner, and that completely achieved the purpose. It was a major source of the energy supply for the country in holding the World Cup. Okay, so this is the task of what we're trying to build, and this terminal will be located in the southern part of Lantau and very close to the Hong Kong border, actually. And there are a couple of facilities that are nearby the facility. One is the dumping ground on the right-hand side, the orange patch that you see here. On the other side, there is the marine park that that Hong Kong is proposing, and so it is quite a congested area, but this is where the jetty will be located. Once the LNG is stored, they are going to be transferred to the power station using 2 shorter length of local pipelines. One is about 18 kilometers long, going to Lama Power Station. The other one's much longer, it's about 45 kilometers, all the way to the Blackpool Power Station. So that's the configuration of the facility that we are building. The initiatives comes from a joint effort between the 2 companies, Hong Kong Electric and CAPCO or CLP, and forming a joint venture company called the Hong Kong LNG Terminal Limited as the joint venture company. The contract is currently ongoing. We have engaged a very famous offshore unit called HKA. They are the one of the major players in offshore oil industry, and the contract has started in early 2020. This date is quite important, and I'll come back to that a little bit later on. So early January 2020 was when the contract was awarded. Construction actually started towards the back end of 2020, about December 2020. That's when the actual physical site construction started. And the scope of work, as I mentioned, there was the jetty to build, and there are the 2 pipelines that we need to build as well. I'll focus primarily on the jetty, as well as the part that I know better, which is the Castle Peak or the Black Pond pipeline that goes to the Black Pond Power Station. So the jetty. So this is the configuration of the jetty. It composes of 9 units. And in the middle, there are 3 bigger ones called the Breasting Dolphin. And these are the units that host the various equipment, the loading arms to transfer the liquid natural gas to the storage area of the vessels. And there are high pressure loading arms to transfer the regasified natural gas to the pipeline and from the pipeline to the power stations. That's where all the activity is situated. There are 3 on either side of the breasting dolphins, what we call mooring dolphins, and those are for ensuring the berthing of the vessels in a secure manner. So this is approximately how it looks like in reality. And if we take a cross-section look at it, these are in the marine environment. So we have about 15 meter-ish of water depth. And typical offshore environment, we have a deep layer of marine mud, very soft marine mud, followed by alluvial layer. And this alluvial layer is very thick and increasing in strength with depth. And we won't be able to find decomposed rock below until approximately 100 meters below seabed level. And so these are fairly challenging environment for building a jetty. Okay, I mentioned the important date of January 2020, and that the first task that we actually faced was COVID-19 first hit the various cities in mainland, and immediate action was there was a lot of lockdown restricting a lot of the people's movement across different cities. And that is a major issue for us because we were about to transfer a large group of expertise from COEX flagship yard in Qingdao down to the proposed fabrication yard in Zhuhai. Now, without these access of people coming from Qingdao, we won't be able to actually start any fabrication work in Zhuhai. And this is very desperate for us because in terms of timing, we have a particular importance in timing, and that is to get started the piling works for this job. We actually only have about half a year to carry out this work every year, and that's in the second half of the year. This is part of the restriction in the environmental permit to protect the sea mammals in the area. And so if we won't be able to fabricate the unit in the first half of the year, there was little chance for us to actually get on to do anything in the second part, and we literally lost the whole year. So this is very, very crucial for us almost straight away. And the action that we took was pretty drastic. We actually transferred the fabrication of the jacket or the substructure units, all of those transfer back to Qingdao for the fabrication. This is a fairly drastic action for those of you who knows that how much planning needs to go into fabrication yard in making these big units. So that was a fairly drastic action very, very early on in the job, and that helped in achieving the physical works later on in the year. There's some pictures on what it looks like in the Qingdao yard. These are the fabrication of the substructure units, what we call the jackets. Fairly major stuff, as you can see. The fender units, these are big units. The other, as a consequence to, well, the change in the fabrication did help us in the first year in 2020, but it also created issues in the subsequent year 2021, because by having those units a lot further north of the territory, we are faced with the fairly daunting task of having to transport the units a long way, right from Qingdao to Hong Kong. And in particular, in the summertime when we have typhoon, this is a particular example that I want to just share with you, because it was a pretty agonizing time that we have experienced. We were ready with transporting the units down in Qingdao, and we were alluded to the prospect of a typhoon coming. That's not too bad. We can usually time this to allow the transportation vessels to avoid the typhoon. But we've learned from these experience transportation expertise that never completely trust the forecasts that are early on. And this is a very good experience because these forecasts actually, as you can see in the green dotted line, it actually changes quite a few times in very, very different directions. And if we were to use the early prediction, we would have been in serious trouble. So that put a lot of emphasis on experience in marine works of what we can plan for in transportation and etc. These are very important aspects that we need to be equipped if we were to be serious in offshore works. Finally, these jacket units arrived Hong Kong, and we have a big lifting vessels to carry out the work. This is the first big lifting vessels that we brought to Hong Kong. This particular one is called Lanjing. Lanjiang, my beg your pardon. This is Lanjiang, the first one. It has a lifting capacity of about 3,800 tons. It's a very, very versatile vessel. It can do pipe laying, it can do heavy lifting. It's stable as a rock in even fairly hostile environments. So a very, very good working vessels. And we were pleased to actually have been able to get hold of this. So this will involve timing the window, the weather window, getting ready, lifting the unit, placing them in place, and then carry out the piling works to secure the jackets. So in sequence, this is the lifting process. For those of you who have sharp eyes, you'll be able to see that in the bottom end of the jacket, there are some plates there, fairly flat plates. And that allows this jacket to be stable on the seabed temporarily before we insert the piles to secure it completely. So that's how it worked in a temporary manner. And then having placed it on the seabed, we start pitching the piles, very, very long piles. And this particular unit, we have raking piles. This far end, if you look at the far end picture, this is a video. I hope you can see it. And the driving using the 80 tons hammer is actually very, very efficient, although these are very big piles. We're talking about a diameter of about 1.8 meter, which you don't very much use in a land situation, but fairly efficient in the offshore environment. And that's what we typically use in offshore. Okay, just turning your attention to what it looks like. If we look at more from a high altitude down, you will see lots of equipment, like the equipment that facilitate metering. There is a fire safety installation. There are all the pipes, the generators, some of the nitrogen gas and the picking facilities for the pipes and etc. So all these are the equipment that goes on top of the jetty, and there's not a lot of experience in building this sort of facility, and all the equipment comes from all over the world in different places. So procurement is a very difficult exercise. But on top of that, we also have the difficulty of managing all this procurement and production of all these equipment in a time when the virus actually affecting the different places in various degree. So it has been an extremely challenging exercise to make sure all these equipment are produced in good time, not to mention the very strained kind of time on the marine transportation of these to Hong Kong. So fairly crucial piece of exercise. So these are the topside units. This happens at the time when we have already got the restricted lifted in terms of people movement within the mainland China. So we were able to actually get all the expertise down to Zhuhai and start fabricating these topside units at Zhuhai, where we originally planned. So that was quite a relief, because these are much bigger units than compared with the jackets, and it would have been quite a difficult exercise to move these fabrication to Qingdao if we had to. Again, this is the picture of the installation process on site, and because these are much heavier units, so we have to bring in a even bigger lifting vessels. This particular one is Nanjing. As you can see, it's much bigger. This is 240 meter long vessels and has a lifting capacity of over 7,000 tons. And again, the stability of the vessel is very, very important to make sure that the lifting is stable throughout the process. This is what it looks like currently out in the sea. If some of you might have been kind of seen through the visits or so on, but if not, this is what it looks like out there currently. And we are about to get on to the next stage, which is the hookup and commissioning. In other words, connecting all the different equipments together, getting all the fire surfaces installation tested, getting all the pipes high pressure tested, etc. Later on, there will be cooling exercise to test all the cooling pipes and so on. So in order to do that, we are bringing in yet another vessel. This is called HKA Annual. And you probably noticed there's a striking difference of this vessel from the other ones, which has a big accommodation unit at the back here. This particular one is to facilitate a lot of activity on the jetty. So instead of lifting the unit, we now need to have people on top of the jetty doing all the commissioning and hookup works. And in order to not make frequent daily trips to the jetty from land, which is a long journey. So every time we need more than an hour to actually get out there. And if it is poor weather, it will means that it will take longer to actually get out there. So an accommodation vessel that is going to berth next to it, allowing transfer of people directly, daily manner, is vitally important to make sure that we don't have people traveling all the time. And this is what it's going to look like. Just a reminder again, what we're trying to build. Okay, quickly turning the attention to the pipeline. Now, if you've seen this before, but I'm just going to mention in particular the CLP, the Capco pipeline, which is the 45-meter long one. There are actually lots of constraints for this pipeline, and I would probably say this is one of the most difficult pipelines that one would ever encounter. These are the kind of constraints that we have to work to. Just want to quickly point out that there are the heavy traffic in the Armstrong Row. We have to deal with shallow water, which usually is good, but too shallow is actually is a lot of difficulty. We have to go through several marine parks or go adjacent to several marine parks, which has a lot of restrictions. And we have to go underneath the Hong Kong to Hai Macau Bridge. We go quite close to the local community of Tai O. There is the complex traffic separation scheme for the marine traffic. And last but not least, we also have to go over a whole cluster of optic fiber cables. These are one of the most important IT infrastructure of Hong Kong with all the high-speed internet connection or facilitating all the high-speed internet connections in Hong Kong. So a lot of challenges in this pipeline, and I won't go into too much detail in the construction, but the three process that we usually do on the pipeline is, first of all, the pipe laying. And this pipe laying is done by a purpose-built vessels, which it's like a factory. So looking at a plan view here, this is like a factory that we go using sections of pipes, going through the different stations and eventually laying it onto the seabed. And these are the different process that we have to get through in order to actually lay it on the seabed. After laying the seabed, we have to set it to a certain depth such that it doesn't get damaged by the various marine activity. And to do that, what we usually do is to use high pressure jetting, disturb the mud, kind of like liquefying it such that the weight of the pipe will help in getting it into the right position. So we might have to do several rounds of this jetting in order to actually allow it to settle into the right position. After this, we do need to further protect the pipeline by placing rock pieces as a protection to the pipeline. So these are the three processes that we have to do in order to secure the pipeline. Just want to mention this particular lifting, which is an extremely difficult exercise that that we have to carry out, and usually lifting is concerned with weight. But here, the difficulty lies in the fact that in our lifting unit, the center of gravity is actually outside the unit, somewhere out here, and making the lifting needing one of the most extreme skill sets in order to actually put that in position. I thought I will just mention this. Okay, now we come to the third part. Apologies for seemingly kind of rushing it a bit, because I do want to get through to this part, which this is one that I really want to get through to the audience, and that is, from this particular project, we do learn a lot, and particularly in the offshore environment, and it's something that Hong Kong has not got a great deal of experience and expertise. But if we were to be doing more of not exactly the same, but similar project in the offshore environment, we do need to beef up in many different aspects. And I've listed a few here: legislation, design, construction, how we need to join up with the marine industry, which at the moment is very, very separate in entity, and how we need to up our game in terms of technology and so on. And I will just illustrate these with a few examples. The first one is the navigation safety. In order to be assured that we are safe in all the navigation activity, we have to do simulations beforehand. And our particular jobs needed one of the most high end of facility to be able to model the things that we are trying to model. And we tried it in the only facility in Hong Kong, but we couldn't get it to work. So we had to go to the UK. This one is in Wallingford. And here we have the facility with the pilot, the QMAX pilot. We also bring along with us the Hong Kong pilot, and sitting in the simulation room, we have the tug master, or in the facility carrying out this simulation to make sure that we can safely maneuver the vessels into the berthing positions. Now, this is one of the examples of how we bring in the future massive vessels into positions. Bearing in mind that we have to avoid the dumping ground and we have to avoid getting into the future marine park. And so you will see how the tug master, under the direction of the pilot, maneuver the 4 tugboats in a very skillful manner, turning it around.
Just a gentle reminder of the time. Thank you.
Yes.
Sorry to disturb.
Thank you. So this is how we maneuver the vessels into position. Design codes, we basically are not really there in terms of the design codes to cope with offshore environment. So a lot of it need to use international codes and so on. And this is the example where we have to use for the piling works, we use a fairly big diameter piles, thick in diameter. The length of the pile is the first segment even is about 60 meters, which we don't normally use in Hong Kong. And the driving manner and the testing manner also are not something that we see very often in Hong Kong. Okay, so coping with the marine environment, this is the long wavelength or long period swells that we have to deal with. So not something that we are very used to in Hong Kong. Technology, we have to use a lot of ROV, the remote operated vehicles, and I probably won't dwell on this, but developing technology is vital with keeping abreast with the offshore industry. Anchor handling tugs. This is something that very much the experience of people in the offshore industry, and there's a lot of safety consideration that we have to take into account, in order to be able to get ready getting people onto the transfer in a safe manner. These are things that we need to prepare ourselves. And we are also not used to this in Hong Kong. So safety in the offshore industry, there's a lot to learn from the experience that we have been. This is another example of how offshore industry transfer people. And there's a lot of training in order to actually get to fairly well practice access to the different vehicle. This is probably my last slide. In order to actually get, or the second last slide, in order to be able to safely conduct works, one of the key aspects is actually to stay out in the sea as long as we could without doing frequent transportation back to shore. So these vessels are equipped with various facilities to allow people to stay on board. Now, this is another thing that Hong Kong industry is not quite prepared. Many of us still prefer to be able to go home after every day, but in the offshore, this is something that is quite against the safe operation in construction. Okay, so in essence, I think this is something that we want to mention, that in terms of tackling climate resilience, if we are having in mind that other infrastructure works in the offshore environment, we do need to prepare ourselves to be better equipped in tackling these kind of offshore construction in our civil engineering remit. So to finish off with an old proverb, I just want to mention that this old saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the best time, the second best time is pretty much now. So this is all I want to share. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Dr. Lee, for your very detailed and enlightening presentation. And we have learned a lot. Actually, decarbonizing power generation for high-density cities like Hong Kong is very crucial to achieving carbon neutrality. And clearly, CLP has done a lot. So thanks for the sharing for today. And because of the time limit, probably we only got time for picking one of the questions. So we have received a few. And let me read the question for Dr. Lee. The question is, how resilient is our undersea supply pipeline and offshore terminal under extreme weather conditions? You know, as we know, Hong Kong receives a number of extreme weather conditions every year. So could you educate us on this question, please?
Okay, thank you very much. It's a very good question, and that's actually that's exactly what we had in mind in developing this terminal, because as I mentioned earlier on the slide, early on we actually relied on the direct pipeline from the source directly into Hong Kong. We actually do feel a bit vulnerable in a sense, because there was actually one event that happened many years ago, and it was to do with the weather conditions causing a landslide. And the landslide actually disrupt and damage one of the pipelines that bringing the gas to Hong Kong, and that caused quite a disruption. And we have to frantically seek for alternative fuel to be able to maintain the high efficiency that we had in Hong Kong. And from that, we started to have this idea of widening the portfolio, giving Hong Kong a different form of the energy from a different form. And that's how we come about the idea of this offshore terminal. And so it's not going to be so much affected by this direct pipeline. It is coming from transportation from around different parts of the world. So the LNG can be coming from Middle East, it could be coming from other places, not concentrating in one location. And the jetty itself, it is designed to the highest standard to be able to resist super typhoon and all the weather conditions out in the offshore environment.
It's excellent. So once again, thanks a lot for sharing, Dr. Lee.
Thank you very much.